My name is Xiaoyang Clark. I'm in the Cybersecurity Fellowship Program under the study of Professor Aspen Alstay in CSGY 6813, Information Security and Privacy. The purpose of this presentation is to explain how biometric authentication could reduce false positive in Know Your Customer process. There are 8 sections in this presentation. First is the introduction. I'm going to discuss the background of this presentation. What is the U.S. Patriot Act? The U.S. Patriot Act stands for Uniting and Strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. The Patriot Act was enacted following the September 11 attacks, with the stated goal of dramatically tighten U.S. national security, particularly as it related to foreign terrorism. What is the anti-money laundering AML law about? In September 11 attacks in 2001, which lead to U.S. Patriot Act in U.S. and similar legislation worldwide, lead to a new emphasis on money laundering law to combat terrorism financing. Starting in 2002, governments around the world upgrade money laundering law and surveillance and the monitoring systems of financial transactions. Anti-money laundering regulations have become a much larger burden for financial institutions. During 2011 to 2015, several major financial institutions faced over increasing fines for breaching of money laundering regulations. For example, in December 2012, HSBC was fined for $1.9 billion. And in July 2014, BNP Paribas was fined for $8.9 billion by the US government. So what is the Know Your Customer KYC policy and why is this important? In the Patriot Act Title III, the Know Your Customer and the Know Your Client KYC guidance in financial service require that professionals make an effort to verify the identity, suitability, and risk involved with maintaining a business relationship. In other words, financial institutions must make sure that their clients are genuinely who they claim to be. Financial institutions may refuse to open accounts or hold a business relationship if the client failed to meet the minimum KYC requirement. KYC is a significant element in the combating financial crimes and money laundering. And customer identification is the most critical aspect. It is the first step to customer due diligence process. The KYC policies are containing 4 key elements: customer acceptance policies, customer identification procedures, monitoring of transactions, and risk management. eKYC is referring electronic Know Your Customer, involves in the use of internet or a digital means of identity verification. So why is KYC so important? KYC procedure defined by a financial institution involve all necessary actions to ensure their customers are real, assess, and monitor risk. Those client onboarding processes help prevent and identify money laundering, terrorism finance, and other illegal corruption schemes. KYC process including ID card verification, document verification, such utility bills as proof of residence. Financial institutions must comply with KYC regulations and anti-money laundering regulation to limit fraud. In case of failure of comply, heavy penalties can be applied. In the US, Europe, the Middle East, and the Asia Pacific, accumulate US 26 billion US dollars in fines have been imposed for non-compliance with AML, KYC, and the sanction funds from 2008 to 2018, let alone the reputation damage done and not measured. The problem domain is alphanumeric risk data has been widely used in financial institutions. However, it has reached its limit in efficiencies and effectiveness. So the traditional way of KYC, it has three major issues. First of all, it has a very high volume of false positive. And second is the inability to spot fake ID documentations using altered name or photos. Identity theft appears when someone uses your personal identification information to pretend to be you to commit fraud or gain other financial benefits. Once the theft accesses this information, they might use it to commit identity theft or sell it on dark web. Criminals use fake identification opening accounts. The third is the complication when screening individuals with identical or similar names. The issue is compounded in the case of a transliteration, which is converting a name from one alphabet to another. Here's an example. Zhang Wei probably is one of the most common names in China. About over 200,000 people share the same name. And this name also have 3 different variants that will possibly has 33 variants. The third kind of variant is how the Chinese surname was written in this way. The second variant is the same pronunciation but written in different ways. And third variant is the order of the surname. In Western country, the family name is after your first name, but in China it's just the opposite. The family name is before your first name. So that caused the 33 different kind of variants. And why this matters? Who are we screening for? So there's 3 types of high-risk individuals we're screening for. The first type are the sanctions, people on the sanction list that related to terrorism, terrorist financing, weapons of mass destructive proliferation, arms trafficking, narcotic trafficking, war crimes, OFAC SDN list, UN, European Union, and Interpol national regulatory enforced list. The second type is the personal interest. Profiles in individuals who might be considered of a special interest due to their involvement in special criminal activities. Also, persons associated with terrorism, political violence, organized crime, financial crimes. The third category will be political exposed person, PEPs. The individual who is or has been entrusted with a prominent public function. Due to their position and influence, many PEPs are in position that potentially can be abused for the purpose of committing money laundering offenses and corruptions, as well conducting activities related to terrorist finance. Biometric authentication has three major benefits. First, to identify risk as early as possible. Individual connected to terrorism and political violence requires detection at the earliest possible stage. Biometric screening afford at the point of entry into the country at the border control. Upon registration, for example, visa or asylum application. Through surveillance when protecting critical access or major public events, screening using biometrics can also spot high-risk individuals who are using assumed identity. Second, to reduce alerts. Biometric screening offers a drastic reduction in false positive by avoiding multiple common names, matches where secondary identifiers are absent. Facial recognition offers greater precision and recall, where matching threshold can be set at a high level of reduced false positive results without the trade-off of increasing the risk of false negative. Third is to identify emerging threats and unnamed individuals. Using biometrics are the primary identification attribute means that it is not necessary to know the name of an individual. Even if someone is using a new identity until now, unconnected with a known individual, they can still be identified. For example, as being associated with a particular criminal or terrorist group. Additionally, a case of a misrepresenting using disguise or cosmetic surgery can be detected with very few exceptions because the fundamental changes cannot be made to an individual's feature. The hypothesis is using biometric authentication would significantly reduce the numbers of false positives that will be identified on standard watch list that has biometric information available. Watch lists are basically a database of individuals and companies that have been flagged for financial crimes, terrorism, and a national security interest. The current process of performing automatic name checks has improved KYC process times, but it still results in a high volume of false positive and inability to verify ID documents using fake names or photos. The hypothesis is that using biometric authentication would significantly reduce the number of false positives that will be identified on the financial watch list that have biometric information available. By adding a biometric components to the existing KYC process, using facial recognition or fingerprinting verification, in addition to existing alphanumeric checks on names, date of birth, government verification numbers. To achieve the goal of creating an efficient and accurate method to conduct a KYC analysis. Next, below, outline a method to implement existing technology into a KYC workflow. First, to text false positive rate would happened when matching against a standard watchlist database that has biometric information. The most commonly available biometric information that is available from a customer with a smartphone are facial recognition and fingerprint recognition. Next is the text with common random example set of user who have a fingerprint and or facial recognition information available, or can provide against the existing database results. To test this hypothesis, the first test the false positive rates that would be happen when matching against a standard watch list database that has a biometric information. The most common available biometric information is from a customer with a smartphone. It's a facial recognition and fingerprint recognition. In a real-world example, we would need to access a watchlist biometric database such as OFAC SDN list, FBI, Department of Defense, or DHS criminal fingerprint database. Then text with random sample set user who have fingerprint and facial recognition information available or can provide it against the existing database of results. If we want to validate the rate of false negatives, we can also including a set of biometric information of user known in the database as well to see if they are detected. This figure is the result of a philological biometrics authentication on mobile phones claimed by related works. In the column of performance, you can see the comparison of false acceptance rates, false recognition rates, and equal error rates for 8 types of mobile phones. The conclusion on future work. In this work, determine how we can implement biometric authentication in the KYC process and develop a procedure to test its effectiveness. Isa Miller et al. Predict that this method would result in a much lower case of false positive using biometrics. This will increase the time in onboarding new clients to financial institutions as well greatly reduce costs for financial institutions and help improve compliance with existing KYC and AML policies. Future work will including secure biometric information so it can remain secure and have a valid retention policy.